What's up, everybody? Welcome to the CanesInSight Daily Podcast, powered by Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. We are live at the home of the Hurricanes, Duffy's Tavern. It's going to be rolling all weekend, man. It's a road game, so you want to watch the Canes with a bunch of Canes fans amongst decades of Canes history. Come out to Duffy's Tavern right there on the edge of Coral Gables. It's not the chain Duffy's. This is Duffy's Tavern. Make sure you're right in Tavern if you want the real deal, not the sterile kind of off the rack thing. This is the real deal. 60 plus years of history and now taking credit cards. The home of the Hurricanes, Duffy's Tavern, your place to watch the games. Not only the SMU game right there at noon, but all weekend. They'll have everything rolling. As you can see, this place has everything and a revamped new menu. Folks who don't need it revamped, that's Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. If you or someone you care about has been injured in an accident, you could be entitled to significant compensation. Dial 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-747-3733. Take back control of your life with Anajar and Levine. I would hop in Pete, but Pete is out in Dallas, Texas. There we go. We got the crowd ready to rock. They know it's Lance Roffer's day here. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Yeah, back in Miami, fired up. But let's go. No, Pete's in Dallas. He may join us here midway through, but he's getting ready for the big game. So we're bringing in the scientist, the inventor of Roffermetrics, man who's going to break down the X's and O's behind what happened at Stanford. If you listen to the Louisville pod before the Louisville game, he really kind of laid out how that game could go with pretty good detail, and they saw it play out. So he took a look at Stanford, wrote a huge article for CanesInSight, which I'll pull up here before I bring him in on his upon further review column right there on CanesInsight.com. 7.6 million posts and counting, all free, as you can see right here. Look at my guy. There he is. You see? Look at that kind of detail. That is what you're getting with the one and only Lance Roffers. Lance, how we doing?
Hey, I'm well. How are you?
Doing good. Here, let me move this a little bit. I'm getting shaky. It feels like it's an earthquake here in sunny South Florida. There we go. No, man, feeling good.
There at Duffy's Tavern, for all of us YouTube TV customers that are going to be losing our ESPN, they can come out and enjoy the festivities there with some fellow Cane fans. So that's just another reason to head out there.
Absolutely right. If you have YouTube TV and you can't watch the game, you know where to go. Duffy's Tavern right there on the edge of Coral Gables. Great. You're a natural, Lance. Well, before we even get started breaking down the X's and O's of this game, your segment, well, can we call the segment upon further review? Can we call the whole thing upon further review? Brandon, right now?
Let's do it.
Or you got something else in your pocket? Let's go.
You know what? The creative DNA did not hit me. So when you come up with those fun things, you've got those snappy, you and Mike Ryan, you got all those snappy little comments. So I'll just steal them where I can. It's flattery whenever you imitate, right? So.
Absolutely. No, you already had the one with upon further review, so we'll roll with that. I guess you got the blurry background. I don't know if that's to avoid kids with Halloween costumes running in the background there. With the blur.
I don't like the effect that it's given me. Right, it's making me look even more bald than I already am. So I think I may just turn it off and let you guys see the dad in the background there. So
there we go. All right, man. Well, there we go. You got the Canes painting. We're rock and rolling on Halloween. But got to thank for this upon further review. Got to thank Canada Financial. Which listen. If you have a small business like myself, you do not want to be an accountant. I know Lance is a numbers guy. I am certainly not a numbers guy. I want to be doing Cane stuff. So let Canada Financial manage your bookkeeping, in-depth accounting, funding, consulting for businesses, all the kind of stuff that you don't want to think about if you're the CEO of your small business. Stop being an accountant. Start being a CEO. Visit Canada
you see
Financial.
It on your screen there. You see kind of.
Go ahead. Give it to me.
You see budgeting and forecasting right there on your screen. That's what I do in my professional life. And so that speaks right to me. I know how difficult it is to analyze that historical data, put together some forecasting for your small businesses. That's something that you don't want to have to do. You don't have to be responsible for that. Let's let's turn to a pro. Let's let Canada Financial do that for you. And, just take one of those things away. And now you have a partner who's going to be driving accuracy for your data moving forward. That bookkeeping, again, that's not something that a lot of people want to do or have to make sure that they get that correct. Let's utilize, CanadaFinancial.com. Let's schedule a call and get you a professional that can really help you just do things that are going to be driving your business forward. Let them handle the data behind and all of that CFO type work for you. And you just be the CEO for your small business driving it forward. So.
Man, one show and you're already better than me at that. 786-213-3909 or CanadaFinancial.com if you want to schedule a free consultation. And Sebastian's born and raised in Miami, Canes fan his whole life, moved to Atlanta 3 years ago and kept his season tickets in his same section. So he's going to be watching on Saturday. Mention CanesInSight, get a discount, CanadaFinancial.com. All right, let's get into it here, Lance. So I pulled up the article, which you did on the Stanford game, right? So this is kind of retrospective, but very instructive look going forward, where you go through play by play, all the big play. All the big plays, small plays, all the little details here, hat placement, you name it. The detail is incredible on these posts. They're on CanesInsight.com. So I want to I always start with kind of the big takeaways because I don't rewatch games with the same level of detail that you have, but there's always something you learn or kind of surprises you or a big takeaway. Maybe something is affirmed, but there's always a big takeaway on top of all the little details and all the little things that you break down. So what was your big takeaway as you rewatched the Stanford game?
Yeah, the first watch, I'm just like all of us, right? I'm a little emotional. I kind of live and die with it, a little bit of a fatalist. I think I even texted you I'm going to just put my phone away during games moving forward, right? And not get too up and down on it. Because when I watched it back, what I really saw was it was close in the first half to being the way it was in the second half for the offense, right? It was just little details here and there where maybe we drop a pass on third down or fourth down. We have that false start again that kind of like moves you back, right? And it takes you from being on schedule to a little bit behind. You get down there several times and you just kind of make a mistake. The same thing happened on defense, right? Where you're right there to make a play, get them off the field. A guy, makes a linebacker miss in the hole and he picks up the first down. They continue driving on. They get a touchdown on that drive when you could have had them off the field, right? And things kind of change on just those small details, those small plays. We saw that a lot in the first half. And I won't lie to the listeners either and say that I was especially thrilled with all the play calling in the first half. I think Danny got the full brunt of that as I was live streaming my thoughts to him. But I think there was also a little bit of, and you've had a couple other guests on throughout the week. I'm a listener just like everyone else, right? And I listen to your guys that you have on, and they do a great job. And I agree with a lot of their points that it did feel like in the first half, maybe we were just trying to settle back in. And I don't know that protect the quarterback's the right word, but we definitely wanted to kind of avoid that snowball, right? You have a 4 interception game. Sometimes those things can linger in your memory just a little bit. And I think that there was definitely some, hey, let's just kind of keep this on the ground a little bit. Let's work on some of our staple plays and maybe prevent any compounding from what happened in the Louisville game for Beck. Now, that said, he did throw a ball directly to a linebacker that popped up into the air, and the DB let it hit him in the face and drop, right? He catches that, now you've got an interception and maybe things are a little different. So, I always want to kind of give the both sides that I see. That's what I saw in the first half. And so that was something that I'm thinking to myself, okay, they really are trying to protect Beck. They come out in the second half and you see a lot of fruits of the labor that happened in the first half, right? Those runs in the first half, and I highlighted in my post, right, where Stanford is kind of resetting the line of scrimmage often in that first half, or they're at least stalemating, which is not what you want to see from an offensive line-led team, right? But Miami's built in the trenches. They're a line of scrimmage team on both sides of the ball. But in the second half, you really saw that start to take hold and start to take effect where the offensive line was 2-3 yards, resetting the line downfield. And those runs in the first half that were 2 and 3 yards, they really did start to become 5, 6, 7 yards in the second half. And Miami really took control in that way. I think there were some missed opportunities in the first half where there were a couple of open guys. I highlighted a couple of times that, Beck really needs to see the field just a little bit better and understand where maybe some of his outlets are before getting to his check down. That's every quarterback in every game. No quarterback's hitting 100% of every read in every game, but there were a few that were missed that if he hits those, they're touchdowns or drive continuers, and you're probably up 21-7 type deal at halftime. I think one of my critiques was maybe in the way that we ran the pace in the first half in a way that made it seem as though we were trying to grind the clock just a little bit. I think I even tweeted something about playing like Army in that first half. And you could sense almost that they were happy going into halftime at 7-7. I would have preferred a little bit more urgency when you have all three of your timeouts, right? This is one of the first games I've ever seen where you go to halftime with all 6 timeouts. Neither team used a timeout going into halftime, and that's a little bit unusual. So you get to halftime, you're tied up with a team that you have a giant spread on, and got some pushback when I kind of referenced that a couple times where the spread doesn't mean anything, but the spread does mean something, right? And the fact that that's the way that the market assesses the team's talents, right? The difference between the two teams with their current setup. And when you are such a large favorite like that, it can also apply pressure if you get into halftime tied up. I was interested to see the way they would respond, and frankly, they responded great.
So big picture here, Angel is asking. He said he was in New Orleans for the weekend. His Uber delivery guy saw my Miami shirt and said, "Yo, you guys got to let Carson Beck cook here." That's a pretty broad statement. So let's get to the specifics of it, which is how do we get Carson Beck going when teams are going to play us the way that they've been playing us the last 3 weeks and probably the rest of the ACC play? What are some specific ways that you see that we can get Carson Beck going, or should we just keep protecting him like you've noted and others have noted that we've been doing?
Personally, I'm just giving my opinion here, right? I'm not a coach. I'm not in the room with them. But what would I like to see? I would absolutely like to see them pass to run late. So pass early to run late. If these teams are going to continue to do some of the things that we're talking about as far as they're really flooding the A gaps. And what that means is basically that the middle of portion on either side of the center, right? Something I noted in this game multiple times in the Stanford game is the fact that both of those linebackers were moving forward based on our tendencies repeatedly. And they were also 1 yard further or closer to the line of scrimmage. And that doesn't sound like a lot, that 3 feet. But if you really, watch games and see how many times, a pass just gets over a defender or just gets through a window, that yard can make all of the difference. And you really want to punish teams for having their linebackers 1 yard closer and kind of attacking downhill as often as they are. Couple of ways you can do that. Obviously everyone knows in today's college football world, RPOs are something that we live with. And we have a lot of, glance, flat RPOs, basically glance is a form of a slant if you think of it that way. And then just flat stretches it horizontally, right? So you've got your run pass option where you've got basically a handoff if you want to run and a play fake if you're going to pass the ball. And then a lot of times what you're going to hit behind that is a glance behind the linebacker. Now, when those linebackers are a step forward, like we talked about there, that opens up that window even more, right? So I would love to see Miami attack with more RPOs early on. I would love to see us with double stacks, right? So that is something that Lashley is a king of, right? And I'll talk about what SMU does and how they're going to attack us with double stacks. But realistically speaking, on film, through this number of games that we've had now, a couple of things I've noticed. The 12 personnel isn't working great. That's, the 2 running backs on the field at the same time. And also, the 2 tight ends has not been super effective this year either. And I know Miami loves to run the 2 tight end packages. They really want to insert that into their run game. I'd love to see us with double slots more, because Tony Johnson, in my opinion, has kind of earned that right to get some more snaps. I don't mean to run that every single play or anything like that, but I definitely believe that you could utilize Tony Johnson and Malachi Tony at the same time more often on the field. You could have a CJ Daniels, Malachi Tony, Tony Johnson package, a little bit smaller than you want to have for a team that runs the offensive type that Miami does, where they have those condensed splits and are running inside as often as they are. But you're seeing them insert Tony, as either a wham or even sometimes as a lead. Tony Johnson seems to have a similar type of mentality where, he's at least competent in, his blocking aggressiveness and effort. And frankly, Lofton has not outperformed them by such an amount in blocking that he's making up for the difference in the passing skill, in my opinion, what I have seen. So that's one way I would love to see them kind of adjust a little bit there. I'd like to see less of that 12 personnel. Those two backs on the field at the same time just hasn't had the efficiency that you'd like to see. And if they are going to run that a little bit more, I think it's time to start employing some of those counters. It's entirely possible. They've held them for a game like this, right? You got a road game against a team that played for the title of the conference last year with an excellent basically, I think both of their coordinators are excellent. You think of Lashley as their offensive coordinator in reality, right? And then I think their defensive coordinator, Scott Simons, has done a very good job. He impressed me on film when I've watched him. I believe he's been up there for 3 or 4 years now, and they've kind of evolved it each year and gotten a little better with that. Ways like specific, if you're going to get into like, a little more XO types, I really think you've got some flood and 3-level beaters that you can employ. And that's against cover 3. Typically, you're going to run those to the field side. The field side is the one that has more space, basically, if you want to kind of like think of field. Has more space, boundaries a little more condensed. That's where you're going to really have a bigger corner who can tackle on average. Look, you can really kind of like divide. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I sorry. Pause. I had to bring in the man himself, the Shadow Realm, right there in Dallas, Texas, with
live from the Star. Live from the Star. I got the indoor facility behind me here, the Cowboys facility. They got it good out here in Texas, man. Looking out the window last night, there was a high school game going on inside of the facility. They have it streaming outside of this big flat screen. I then turn on the TV inside the room. They have a whole nother high school game going on. We got to get it right in Florida, man. It's ridiculous. We have so many of these streaming services. You got to pay for all these streaming services to catch a single game. They got it all over the place here in Texas. I'm loving it out here, man. I don't know, man. I don't know. I may not come back, man. May not come back.
Well, you already look like you're in witness protection, Pete. So maybe you're just going to stay out.
Well, I was going to say the lighting is not great here. It's better than seeing the back side of the room, though.
No, I like this better.
Yeah, we're going to work with this today.
So Lance was in the middle of breaking down just kind of different ways to attack. Texas, right, the home of spread football, right, feels like for years, about high school and everything else. So, Lance, we interrupted you in the middle of your flow there, but if you remember where you were at, pick it right up because you were rolling,
yeah,
man.
No worries.
Fans want to hear it.
No worries. Brevity is not my strong suit. I sure do like to use words, so no worries there. You always got to interrupt me and keep me on task, but basically, what I was saying is, you divide the seam, right? So you've got your hash, and then their spot drop looks, and what that spot drop basically means is someone dropping out to a spot, right? A lot of times it's going to be an overhang defender who's trying to take away some of that backside glance we talked about in the RPOs, things like that. But if you then, and people aren't going to love this, but if you bring some of those condensed splits against a look like that, right, you can then burst out. And what that does is that stresses those spot droppers because a lot of times they're also going to be responsible for a flat, one or the other of your spot droppers. If you have two, and if you just have one overhang, a lot of times he's going to be an overhang and then someone else is going to have to get to the flat, and that stresses those rules quite a bit. What you're hoping to do is get a bust, right? And either have a big play off of that or get someone behind. When you've already got a linebacker 1 yard up based on just the tendencies that Miami's offense has run, and that's what Stanford did. SMU may not. They may have their linebackers back even further. I haven't seen their game plan yet, of course, but those are some of the things that you can do to really stress some of those rules when they're running that cover 3. When they run the cover 1, and let me just kind of first level set with the fact that Simons is really a single high guy. His defense is predicated on single high. And think of like a safety who's at the post, right? If you think of a field goal, they've got the post. And so really that's where all that name comes from, is just the post of the field goal. And so you've got a single high or a post safety in his world most of the time. And you can run several looks out of that, but cover 3, cover 1 are going to be your most common. You can also run quarters, but for the most part, he's running cover 3 about 54% in my research, cover 1, 29%, right? So, that's the vast majority right there. You're already at 83% of the plays are going to be cover 1, cover 3. So you can kind of anticipate their tendencies to be in that defense. So just kind of level set all that. And so you can have those flood 3-level beaters. That's really going to attack whenever you anticipate them in cover 3, right? Based on their tendencies, based on what you've seen on film, down in distance, they run cover 3, against this play often, right? So then you can kind of anticipate that. And then you can run those bunch stacks like I talked about against their cover 1, right? When you anticipate them being in a cover 1 based on tendencies. I really want to kill them with the bunches. I really want to see Miami run more bunch stack type looks. You can run 3x1s, where you kind of think of like they look like a triangle on the field a lot of times with 2 on the line and 1 back. That can be a screen look. You can also run, double moves off of that. You can, hit them with a vertical off of the front man in your 2x1 bunch over there. A lot of times that's going to be like a Josh Moore or a C.J. Daniels type. That's going to be like a lead blocker if you're running a screen look. Love that. You can also do a lot of like rubs out of that. Individuals are going to press quite a bit that look because you want to get up and protect against the screen. A lot of times the defense is going to press, so you can really run those rubs for the slot. And guess what? We've got 2 really good slots. Malachi Toney is one of the best receivers in the country this year, loves to work out of the slot. You can get him open with some of those looks. And then, like always, right, like your bread and butter against that cover 1, you want to run the deep overs, right, the post and stack, right, to where you really put that post safety in conflict. Does he kind of attack down to get that deep crosser, the deep over, what they'll call it sometimes as well, or a post? Or does he take the vertical, right, and kind of stay over the top of that, and then that middle of the field opens up? Long-winded way of saying, getting back on track. I really want to see them attack that intermediate area in more of the 10 to 20 yard area than what they have been doing in the past several games, because frankly, it hasn't been super efficient. And I felt like some of the underneath and some of the, when you do see a broken rule, Beck has missed it. So I'd just love to attack the intermediate area a little bit more because I've seen him be more efficient and thrive in that area just a little bit better. You've got to protect him though, because that's when you're attacking that area is when you can see a higher risk of interceptions.
Lance, just to clarify though, you think that Beck's missed some looks in the intermediate game, or do you want to see them, give him more options in the intermediate game? A little bit of both?
I felt like against Stanford, there were a couple of times in the first half that Beck missed some open receivers because he didn't go through all of his progressions. I felt like he locked into one side of the field and then got to his check down twice. I highlighted it in the article. We kind of ran through the article before you jumped on, Pete, and a couple of times I saw that. One of them in particular was a touchdown, or at the very least, down to the 5-yard line on a 3rd and long. And then I think we actually missed the field goal. So it ended up being a pretty impactful miss. Because Stanford had a bust. They had a bust to the boundary. They had 2 receivers take the vertical, and the out settled down right at the first down marker and didn't have anyone within 20 yards. Beck never looked to that side of the field and took the check down. I just want to make sure that he knows where his outlets are on all of the plays, right, so that he can at least check it before he does check down. And this particular play had no pressure, so it wasn't as though he had to get rid of the ball or he was going to take a hit. So a couple of times in the first half, I did see that happen. I thought he played pretty well in the second half, though.
Lance, I know we're talking a lot about the some of the coverages we expect to see. But I'm curious, personnel wise on the back end, how do you think they compare to Louisville? Because I don't know that we gave Louisville's secondary much credit heading into that game, and they obviously ended up being they performed really well against Miami for a factor of reasons. But how do you think that secondary for SMU from a talent standpoint matches up with Louisville?
Well, I did give Louisville's corner room a little
maybe
bit.
Maybe me and Danny didn't.
That was me. I saw Pittsburgh carve him up.
As their best player out there. So.
Yeah. I don't want to let me not put words in your mouth there, but I mean, how do you? So you did respect Louisville's secondary. How would you rank SMU's compared to theirs?
Yeah, so just a quick level set as well. I have seen SMU live. SMU came to Missouri State to play, which is wild, of course, that they came to play at Missouri State. But that was a game that kind of reduced my fear that I had in SMU a little bit, quite honestly, because they went to the playoffs last year, the college football playoffs. I was thinking that this team was going to be, just a whole other level, right, than a Missouri State who, frankly, isn't very good, right? And they weren't. Missouri State was leading most of that game and honestly very much could have won the game if they didn't make some pretty self-inflicted wounds down in the red zone a couple of times. One thing that SMU can do is they can create turnovers, right? So they can kind of fool you with coverages, because one of the things that Simons really does a good job of is changing the picture post-snap. And so you think you're going to be in one coverage and you're in another. A lot of college quarterbacks are just going to throw based on what they've been taught, on the rules of the coverage that they expected. When it changes, sometimes you can see those intercepts. But frankly, their talent out there is not great. It is probably lower in Power 4 in the secondary, to my mind. And also, I didn't think they were super great on the defensive line either. I thought they were smart. I thought they were well coached and disciplined in the things that they do, both live and on film. Of course, I looked at their film as well and tried to see if that matched up with what my eyes saw live. Frankly, SMU on defense, the way they are succeeding so much is through scheme, much more so than through personnel talent.
It's interesting because they have so many interceptions, but when I watched their games against Clemson, Wake Forest, forget the ones where they really struggled against some of these Big 12 teams, they had some of the worst ball skills I thought that I've seen in some of these plays. I mean, like, they really lost. You look at the Wake Forest game. It was a completely misjudged ball that cost them the game. Against Clemson, I believe Clemson scored on not a Hail Mary, but a deep ball late in the first half, which was just completely misjudged. I mean, these were like some egregious, if they would have read them right, they would have been picks. Ended up being huge plays against them. So like you said, I think it's the scheme that might be leading to some of these picks, as opposed to Louisville, where they made spectacular individual plays to take the ball away. But we're gonna have a question here, and this is something we've talked about, I think, offline a bit, which is from David Eisenberg, about using up-tempo. That's when Beck's at his best. I see Beck as a quick operating kind of guy, just someone who Ward, he'll hold the ball to the end of the shot clock and make a play. Beck, to me, he wants to do everything fast hands, everything else, quick release. How do you see the use of tempo right now? You talked about maybe taking the foot off the gas in the end of the half when we were down or tied. So, just the use of tempo to juice up this offense and get Beck going a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely hitting on a sore spot for me as far as the pace that Miami has tried to operate at.
Let it loose, Lance. Let it loose. Let's hear it.
I tweeted out, let's run a play with more than 20 seconds on the play clock just to see how it feels. A little wedding crashers reference there. But I have really strongly believed that Beck is at his best when he's a processor, because he is a quick processor. You can get him to the line of scrimmage. He can identify quickly. He gets coverages identified. He gets fronts adjusted. A lot of times the quarterback's going to be involved with that as well. Your center's also going to be in concert there a little bit. But that's something that I believe is a strength for him. I would love to see us play a little bit faster pace and some of these games coming forward. I doubt you see it against SMU, though, because the other side is going to run with so much pace and run so fast. I think coaches tend to default to playing a little bit slower on offense against them to give that defense maybe a little bit of time, right? Because they don't want to go right back out there against some of that pace. This is just a guess, right? This is just what I expect. I do not expect them to change much. We haven't seen it much in the past, right? We haven't seen them completely alter things. I expect they're going to run tight splits. I expect they're going to run a lot of duo encounter in the run game. I expect they're probably going to run a slower pace just because of what I talked about on the other side. But I also would like to see them like put their foot on the gas just a little bit more early on to get a lead. And like I said, you can pass early, score early to be able to run late and close out the game. And then you can slow it down after you get ahead.
All right. So before we switch gears to the defense here and what SMU is going to try to do on offense, want to say a quick word about our friends at the University of Miami Sports Medicine Institute. If you consider yourself an athlete or just an active guy, probably know how hard it is to sit on the injured list with pain or injury, maybe even try to hack your own rehab, come back early. But if compromising your movement or performance is not an option, call the experts at the University of Miami Sports Medicine Institute. Whether it's elite competition with University of Miami athletics, just everyday movement, the University of Miami Sports Medicine Institute is the trusted choice for those who demand excellence. Set an appointment today at uhealthsports.com. All right, Lance, so defensive side of the ball here, going against Brett Lashley. The group chats have all been talking about, hey, they're just waiting to see RJ Maryland running wide open like Will Mallory used to do on some of these plays where the quarterback fakes the run and the tight ends are streaking down the field, or maybe a Chris Johnson getting matched up on a wheel route with Mo Toure and they just loft it over and he's off to the races. I mean, these plays have all ran in the group chat all week as people prepare for this Brett Lashley offense that we are very familiar with. So seeing this offense on tape and in person, to me, looks a little slower maybe than it has in the past, at least from a personnel standpoint. Obviously, Chris Johnson, we know what kind of speed he has when he gets going, but I don't see the quick twitch that maybe I've seen in the past with these guys. But you tell me, both personnel-wise and scheme-wise, what you see with this SMU offense.
Yeah, I'll kind of start with the scheme. Realistically, he's going to be formation heavy into the boundary, right? He's really going to be stack and bunch heavy. I already kind of talked about like why I like to see that on offense. Lashley definitely leans into that quite a bit. His core is going to be that tempo, just like you talked about. You're going to see tempo. They're going to run fast. They're going to really run fast after they get the first down on a drive, right? So a lot of times what you're going to see the first couple of plays, they're going to run more of a typical type pace. But after they get that first down and identify what your personnel is when they got that first down, that's when they're really going to press the pedal, because they want to press the bruise, right? They want to identify what is it that they can do against your personnel package that you have out there, and then trap you in that personnel package so you can't sub, right, to adjust against that. That's absolutely what the whole plan with the pace to be is, to trap you in a personnel package that you don't want to be in against an advantageous offensive look, right? So they're going to be guard, tackle, counter heavy in their run game. They're going to really run a lot of those RPOs, but they're going to run glance choice. And when I say like choice, they have a lot of one-word calls for their choice. So they're going to run with double stacks. So think in your head, right, where you've got two receivers that are stacked on both sides. What that does is that allows them to have leverage to both sides. So your defense at this point has to try and keep numbers to both sides. So when you have the double stacks, you can now block on the edges. So you can run when I talk about the choice part of things, your quarterback has a choice, right? He's just counting numbers. So if you're light inside, we call that the box, right? You can now run that inside counter, that guard tackle counter, and you've got individuals on the edge that can block if you decide that you're going to run the outside, either sweep or, maybe a motion that's going to run outside. And then there's a third part of that you see so often, and you talked about it, Danny. You had great information there where you talk about Toure kind of getting on a running back there, right? Well, now you have to stay firm with your run fits, but you also have to identify who's covering who out of that bunch, right? You're going to have switch releases at times, and what that really means is they just switch, right? The one becomes the two, and the two becomes the one. And you have to remember, okay, well, I'm the one now when he switched, or I'm the two now, right? And I have seen so many times in Lashley's career, right, where the two insides take the one because they don't realize you've switched, and now the two becomes the one vertical, and he's wide open. Rambo had a touchdown against Georgia Tech, pretty famously on that, where Georgia Tech jumped doubles inside. The exact play I'm talking about. You see that from Lashley all the time on film. You're really going to see a lot of like one words. They're going to be trying to do things that are called open stack, which basically just means they're trying to get their stacks to leverage you in the run game, right? So now if you don't step out and have a 3x2 on one side, which is kind of like a typical defense for those stacks outside, it looks like a triangle if you're watching as a defense, right? You kind of outside leverage, inside leverage, and then a point person who's up close to the line of scrimmage, right? And what he's trying to do is basically be a wedge buster on those if they throw a screen to the back stack. So Lashley's very simple offense, right? He's going to run these looks over and over and over, and then he just has counters out of that or choice out of that. And the quarterback's really just counting numbers. You know, I did a lot of upon further reviews back in the day on Lashley, only was on our side, right? And I over and over pointed out the fact that he makes it really easy for the quarterback. He's just trying to count, right? So if you've got 5 in the box inside, I know where I'm going with it. If I've got 7 in the box and I've got 2 outside with 3 blockers, I know where I'm going with it. And so the quarterback pre-snap already has a pretty determined where he's going to go with it. And then, of course, what Heatherman's trying to do is he's trying to play games where it looks like he's got 5 in the box, but he's got a creeper to make it 6. Or it looks like they've got the B gap open, you know, and then he's going to insert post-snap or long arm, which is like a defender who's going to be outside of a tackle. Oftentimes he's going to long stick or long gap, right? And so he's going to jump from the C to the A, and then you're going to replace with the inside nose who's going to scrape or spill outside the B. And so now you've replaced 3 gaps post look, and the offense runs right into your what you trapped them to make it look like you had an open B gap. So those are kind of the games that you're going to see between these coordinators quite a bit. Here's the thing that really stood out to me as well when I was kind of watching these teams on film that really caught my eye is that Simons runs a defense very similar to what Heatherman runs. It's almost like they're from the same tree. They're not. Simons comes from the Hugh Freeze tree. So if you kind of think of Auburn's defense a little bit, that's kind of the influence that he has. But they're very, 4-2-5, post-snap creepers, post-safety, cover 3, cover 1, just like Miami. So what does that mean? That means these teams are practicing against a defensive look that's pretty similar, or they have in the past. Right now you're running a lot of scout and you're practicing for the next team, but fall camp, spring camp, you practiced against that look all the time. And so now which coach makes the better adjustments is going to be like the key chess match you see.
Lance, we're getting a lot of questions about the center spot. James Brockermeyer has not been his best, showings the last couple of weeks. If you talk to people inside the building, he was arguably their highest, not arguably, he was their highest graded lineman for like the first month of the season. So obviously he hasn't been great the last couple of weeks, but there's a lot of people who are saying, hey, is he the reason they are struggling at times on the inside run? Is there anything you see with his play? People are suggesting, do they throw Ryan Rodriguez in there? And I talked about it yesterday. My opinion is that center, such a communication position, like continuity position that, listen, if he stinks it up the next few weeks here, I'm not going to say anything's off the table, but I would have a hard time believing they're just going to make a switch, in the middle to now later part of the season at that spot. But your opinion?
Yeah. So again, it may not be the most popular with your listeners at times, but Miami has not done any favors for Brockermeyer, right? It is unusual for you to line your center up and expect him to take a nose tackle one-on-one as they have so often this year. And frankly, in many games, he's done a really good job with it, but it is unusual for you to lock your center one-on-one into the nose tackle as often as Miami does. most of the time, these teams, what they're doing is that center is a secondary blocker to that nose tackle, right? And so you've got someone else engaging that nose tackle first, or you've got a double team on that nose tackle and your center is kind of secondary, and he's either looking to get under the shoulder and move him and help the initial block for the guard and then get to a second level. That's oftentimes what your center is really trying to do. Other times you'll see your center try and get one gap over and get to the 3 tech, who's typically a smaller, more explosive player than your nose tackle is going to typically be. This is all generalities. It's not every play, but that's typically what you're asking your center to do and get those reach blocks. So they're really going to be moving a lot more than what Miami has asked Brockermeyer to do the last couple of weeks against some of these long nose tackles. He has not played super great. I won't, dispute that fact, but they're putting him in spots that are difficult for him to do. And the biggest thing you want Brockermeyer to do in a one-on-one versus a nose tackle in those situations is to lose slower. So because you realize he's got, a 30-pound disadvantage on a lot of these players. You just need him to lose a little bit slower than he did on that 4th and 1 and maybe a couple of other times where he gave up his chest quick. What I mean by giving up your chest is allowing those longer, nose tackles to get into your chest. And at that point, you've lost leverage. You're usually going to lose 2 yards. That can interrupt your guards who are pin, pulling, doing those different actions that your guards are trying to do behind them. When your center gets pushed back, it can trip those guys. They've got a bubble around them. That really blows those plays up. So what you really need him to do against those nose tackles is a long-winded way of saying you need him to lose a little bit slower. And I think you could also stand to give him a little more help on some of those inside runs where you're short yardage and really just needing to get push.
Real quick, I'll let you go after this, but when Miami was playing DJ Lagway, you kind of called that like a career game for him, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what
that was a week early.
Potentially have here. Well, that's what we potentially have here with Zion Nelson, man. Let me tell you, I'm going D money mode here, like he did with Lagway. I think he plays a heck of a game, and I think he holds his own against Bain if they're matched up.
I hope it goes the same way as my prediction. It's
I hope so too, man. I hope so too. But that's my bold prediction right there. No one's gonna agree with it, but
yeah, that is
bold. I'm not gonna agree with that. I would be highly surprised if anyone fares well against Bain outside of the cut techniques that Louisville employed against him. That's the only thing I've seen that has worked against Bain. I've seen a lot of holding. I've seen some face mask pulls. I've seen a lot of jersey pulls, things like that not getting called. But what's worked within the scope of the rules, in my view, has been those cut blocks. And that's difficult, to have a defender be able to play all of that. But that's kind of where I'm at with Bain. I think he takes it to Zion.
So back to the personnel here for SMU on offense.
Oh, yeah.
I want you to look, RJ Maryland, he's pretty impressive. The guy probably should be a Cane, right? Russell Maryland's son. He looks like he can go. Romello Brinson, we know what he is, or at least we've seen him talent-wise, skill-set-wise. Now he's starting to put together on the field, produce for them. Chris Johnson. Brashard Smith, who didn't work out with us for a variety of reasons. Me and Pete have covered that pretty in depth, but certainly his twitch and suddenness in the backfield was a big part of what they do. You see some injury concerns with Jennings. Just overall, how do you assess the talent level of SMU's offense, and maybe even compare it to what you remember from last year when they were statistically a better offense?
Yeah, they're a little bit down compared to last year. They probably were a little more explosive outside. Chris Johnson has not been as good as Brashard Smith. I can tell you that with certainty. I kind of, watched Brashard Smith quite a bit last year, and I've watched Chris Johnson this year. Not that Chris Johnson's been bad. He just hasn't been to the kind of the level that Brashard Smith was able to play for them last year. Honestly, I was more impressed with SMU's backup running back. He's a little bit more of a hammer type, that physical guy, that you don't want to tackle. I think Miami's kind of got the size and athletes to be able to match up a little bit better with that than some other teams have. And this is the type of game that Miami just has a clear and distinct personnel advantage at every spot on the field, in my opinion. Even including wide receiver. I think Brinson's a nice player. I was never super high on Brinson, remember some of those back in the days. I thought he was good for one of those low IQ plays every game. And that's kind of continued this year as well. He's had a couple of fumbles, maybe some drops, things like that. Jennings has also backed up a little bit, in my opinion, from last year. I think one of the things that happens as quarterbacks go throughout their careers, right, is, at the beginning, you kind of find some things that are working for you. Defenses adjust, try to take some of your strengths away and ask you to do other things, or put you in spots to maybe take some longer outside the hash numbers throws. And Jennings has struggled a little bit more this year on making some of those throws than he did last year. His deep ball has also not been quite as good, in my opinion. Some of those vertical shots, if you're putting it in that context. So I think everything's kind of taken a step back for SMU, and really the results have also kind of shown us that, right? I mean, scoring like 12 points or whatever it is, against a Wake Forest is not something you would have seen last year. So I think all around, this is a game Miami's got to win.
So before we switch gears here to, I know a topic that's close to Pete's heart, wanted to talk about the top landscape artisans in South Florida. That is Orchid Man, ORCHID Man, landscape artisans from Palm Beach all the way down to the Florida Keys. They make your landscape maintenance easy. They'll be your quarterback for this process. It's not just the pretty stuff, all the flowers, which they can help you with as well. It's also the dirty work, the day-to-day maintenance, tree stump grinding, landscape lighting, hurricane prep, rain gutters, you name it. If you have residential or commercial landscape needs, there's only one choice. You see those OM trucks all over South Florida. I know our listeners have been talking about them. ORCHID Man, Florida.com. South Florida's top landscape artisans, and a huge, huge Canes fan, the Orchid Man.
And I got to say, I never know what's going to come out of your mouth sometimes. When you said it's something that's near and dear to my heart, I did not expect the landscape artist to be what you were going to say.
Well, that is near and dear to your heart. But really what I wanted to get to was the defensive line depth. Pete, this is something you've been talking about even since before you went to the Shadow Realm here. You've been talking about the need to develop defensive line depth, concerns there, and just long season, hopefully, if Miami does what they need to do, having to need different guys step up. Lance, in your breakdown, I noticed you paid particular focus to some of the backup defensive linemen or some of the guys that started in this game due to injury. So what do you see from the young defensive linemen as you break down that Stanford tape?
Yeah, the future's bright. The future is bright for Miami. I think you brought in Mario to stack talent and grow. He's basically in the talent acquisition business. He's maybe not a Jeff Brom when it comes to the X and O's, but where he wins is off the field, and you're seeing that. You're seeing Armando Blunt. He was impressive in this game. His power, his motor, his IQ, the way that he kind of really just did his job over and over in this game and was at home on some of those like attempted trick plays, things like that. And that was something that really impressed me. I think he has grown throughout the season. He's improved from day one till now, in my view. Super excited about Blunt. I think next year you could even see the light come on to where he becomes, maybe a star. Scroggins, a guy that, I outlined snap counts on the board maybe a month ago, and he's one that really kind of surprised you. You wouldn't have thought, oh, yeah, he's getting, more snaps than you'd think. And you're really starting to see why. Again, another player that's maybe a little bit denser than some of the light edges that we've had in the light foot and some of those areas. Really impressed with his play. He continues to get pressure at a rate that's, well above average. And another player that I think next year you could really see take a step forward, see a big role. Donta Simpson, big fan of what I saw in this particular game from him. It really looked like it started to slow down. So, you're 18, 19 years old, and in high school, you were the best, right? You were bigger, stronger, faster than everyone. You get to college, and now you're actually smaller, slower, younger, and it really tilts on its head. And a lot of these freshmen, especially at the defensive tackle position, I call it an old man position, they really they're just like wild, like ball of knives trying to go forward all the time. And maybe they forget their plan. They forget some of that pass rush plan or some of that hand usage plan that is being driven into them by our coaches. You really saw Simpson in this game use his hands, use some of those swim moves, over moves, and the quickness to get into the gaps against Stanford. That really stood out to me. I really liked what I saw from him. Frankly, and it did, not to turn it into a negative or anything, but I feel like he could be coming on to, maybe a couple of the guys that have been getting snaps ahead of him and might start.
That's what I said last week. I said that last week. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. I love it when you guys kind of interact. So I'm not just like giving a soliloquy.
No, I'm sometimes I just sit back and it's poetic. So I just gotta take it in,
That's the first time anyone's ever said that to me, Pete. I appreciate that.
The analytical poet. That's your new.
That's a clickbait title.
Love it. So those are kind of the guys I saw. And, Lightfoot, I thought he did well stepping into a full-time role. There were a couple of times I would have liked to have seen him be even more physical. I think I even called it out a couple of times. Next year, when he's got 10 more pounds, he probably makes this play. He probably squeezes this. A lot of this defense, especially on Roscoe, which is just rush outside, contain on edge. So people call it Roscoe for short, right? And what that means is you're going to take a couple steps upfield, but you're going to contain so you don't get behind the quarterback or behind the running back and give up some of those gashes, right? And then you want to really squeeze that tackle with your hands and your power and length, which compresses that hole, right? That C-gap hole, that outside the tackle hole. We saw a couple of times he was right there and just didn't squeeze enough. I thought he was a little tentative, and if he just squeezed a little harder, there wouldn't have been a hole for the running back to push through. Happened a couple times in this game. First part is be where you're supposed to be, right? And he did that. Now I just want to see a little bit more physicality and power to squeeze those holes. I think next year when he's got maybe 10 pounds on him, you'll see that a little bit more. So Lightfoot's developing, played well, want Messidor back. Messidor's been playing at an All-American level. You want him back for this game. But those are kind of the things I saw on the D-line with our young players. The future's bright.
So we'll keep this conversation going, but Lance, I know you got to run. Appreciate you as always. Thank you, Kanata Financial. Happy Halloween to the Roffers clan, and we will see you next week, hopefully for a victory breakdown.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys. Take care.
Thank you, Lance.
All right, Pete. So I want to continue on this because I know this is big to you. What's up?
No, I was just gonna say we're talking the big boys, so I gotta talk about LaMelo's real quick. This is what they're feasting on. The recruits, not only the recruits, but the guys on campus, man. LaMelo's Meat Market. Check out LaMelos.com. Fresh Wagyu beef delivered to your door. Use promo code CIS10 for 10% off your order. If you're local here in Miami, got the store at 9810 South Dixie Highway. You got all the Wagyu. You got the prime cuts of meat as well. The skirt steak to me is unbelievable for tailgating. I know a lot of you guys are going to be watching from home, so go to LaMelo's today or tomorrow, man, and they'll be open. They'll be open tomorrow morning, so you can check them out before the game. LaMelos.com. Australian Wagyu.
Love that. That's a Ross line right there, Pete. So staying with the big boys here as we continue this discussion. Watching SMU. I do think they have some offensive line problems. Not the same thing about Louisville, and they were able to mitigate those. I know one thing that Jennings likes to do, or like to do with Jennings, is sort of roll them out, design quarterback movement where it's not a scramble. It's, hey, move the pocket, get him out of there to maybe protect against some weaknesses on your offensive line. You limit the field a little bit by doing that, but he has a good arm. He can make some throws and challenge different parts of the field from there. Marquise Lightfoot, who he can close that distance and run you down when you try to do that quarterback movement. I think he could factor in there. Who are some names just from watching what happened in Stanford, talking to your people, that you are keeping an eye on as sort of a young defensive lineman?
For this next game, I mean, Scroggins.
Or just in general, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Scroggins is the guy. I mean, we've been saying this, you got to pay close attention to what some of the coordinators say in these press conferences. And Herbert Scroggins was a guy maybe a week before the season. Corey Heatherman's like, this guy's going to play more than people realize. He has the body type. He has the mental capacity, right? You saw the motor that he plays with. I mean, he's the guy right now that to say that they're most excited about someone when you have a room full of very talented players is maybe hyperbolic, but they think this guy can be an absolute star for them. I mean, we talked about last year how they didn't really go into the portal for defensive linemen. I expect them to do that this year more so because for defensive ends, I should say, just because you're losing Bain and Messidor. But Scroggins is a guy that I think they're looking at and saying, hey, that's a starter next year. I don't think there's any doubt about that in their minds right now.
Yeah, and you still got Hayden Lowe. You still got him on the Blunt Life. I mean, it's going to be a good group, I think, overall. And they're gonna work the portal there. Yeah, I mean, the thing with Scroggins that caught my attention is just the ability to still perform with the extra weight, because he didn't look like the biggest guy in the world. Like Hayden Lowe is huge always. I think with Scroggins, you said great pass rusher, great kid, great worker, not overly huge and functionally athletic, but not like a freak by any means. But the fact he's put on the weight and still is able to get to the quarterback, it's just his intangibles, I think, are really carrying him, and and just his natural ability to rush the passer. Sharks outfit saying Bain said himself, Scroggins is his guy, and he's next up. Dante Simpson too, Pete. He's someone who has been dealing with some injuries, trying to get stronger. I think the big thing with him, but we identified him early on, back in spring, I believe. We were the first people to really push the Dante Simpson agenda, and he's had injuries since then. He's gotten stronger, but you still want to see him get stronger. Cristobal mentioned his core strength needing to get better and getting better, but his quickness as a bigger guy is pretty easy to see.
Yeah, I think the strength will determine, how strong he gets over the next, couple of years will determine what his ceiling is ultimately, because there's obviously levels when it comes to this, but he's shown now last week, I think, starting to emerge that he can be a rotational piece here for this team. And it's funny because when Lance said it, I jumped at it right away, because I mentioned last week, I think it was with Amon, maybe earlier this week or maybe last week, I forget. But I said, we talk a lot about receiver because that's when you see guys getting the ball. But there's other positions here where I think certain guys can push. And I said, does Dante Simpson push a Justin Scott? Does he take, because people are saying, people like to say, well, Keelan Marion shouldn't be getting as many reps, shouldn't be getting as many snaps. I think that there's other guys across the roster you could say, hey, they're getting pushed, and this is a positive, right? I don't want to look at this as like guys aren't performing to their level. I want to say, hey, you have a 5-star who's now being pushed by a guy who was a 3-star prospect that was a great evaluation by Miami, and you want to see you need more from Scott.
Yeah.
I'm not giving up on him by any stretch, right? Sometimes these defensive linemen take multiple years to really hit it.
Yeah, not linear. There's ups and downs sometimes.
Yeah, so that position in particular. So I think it's a really good thing, though, for the health of the roster when you start to see that sort of competition arise.
No question about it. And with, Scott, I think with Ahmad Moten, who's having a really good year and has been turned into a really good player, is that, Ahmad Moten, it wasn't a straight line, right? It was ups and downs. It was competition. Really, when we started bringing in guys to play over him is when he started getting rolling and earning his spot, right? So I think that's only going to help Justin Scott. It's going to help that room. It's I like what we're seeing with the defensive line. Now, Bain is such an impactful guy. As a freshman, you kind of knew he was special, so like extra special. So to replace him, I don't know if that would have to be the portal or someone really making a big leap as far as like one player that is that dominant. We'll see. I mean, who knows? But I do think collectively, and that's a collective position too, defensive line. You need guys there. You're seeing a lot of progress, not just for this year, but for the future. And then it gets to a retention game and finding out who's going to be the guys you got to pay and keep around, because it's this is a position that gets rated by every single school, and every single school is getting rated. So really this time I think is helpful to find out who is who and who's going to really, really be that building block. Herbert Scroggins, Armando Blunt, the Marquise Lightfoot guys that are really showing that they can go, and then you're seeing people step up. But yeah, I think, look, you identified this as an issue. I feel better about it now. You never want to see Messidor get hurt. Hopefully he's healthy tomorrow, because you got to win this game. You got to win every game, but this is a game that, is going to be one of the more challenging ones left on the schedule. You would love to see
if he's not 100%, I don't play him. Quite frankly, I really don't. But
yeah, he's a guy's had lingering injuries too, right, in his career. You're right. You've seen him rush back and not be 100%. It's not the same. You really want him full go. It's a big game for Marquise Lightfoot, man. This is a game to me when they're not a physical offensive line. It's going to just dominate, Lightfoot, just pushing him back. He's got to dominate this game. He's got to get to Jennings. He's got to get he's got to go sideline to sideline and eliminate some of that horizontal movement that you see from Jennings to get free. I think his speed needs to be a difference maker in this game.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think, Miami's obviously played some guys who are mobile. Jennings is probably not as powerful as the Byron Browns and the Lagways of the world, but he's also not Castellanos, how he moves. Probably, the better mix of all those guys. Because look, he's not a dynamic guy with his arm, but he can make some throws. So he's not someone that particularly concerns me. I'm more looking at who they have on the outside, which also, again, it's Romello Brinson. They have, the big power back who transferred in as well. What's his name? TJ
Harden.
I forget his last name. Harden. Yeah. So it's more about those guys to me, because when you look at Louisville, we were saying Miller Moss was so limited with his feet, and look what they ended up doing. Right.
Yeah.
So I think he has the ability to spread the ball around, but are those guys going to be dynamic enough to make a difference for them?
No, absolutely. I think you hit the ball on the head as far as the concerns. It's going to be a fun game, man. I'm glad you're out there. I want to ask some questions about the vibe out there. But first, my guy, that dude said, "Good morning, D-Money. About to crack me a can of BUZZN on my lunch break." A nice lunch break there. Shout out to that dude. Shout out to BUZZN. Drink BUZZN.com. That's drinkBUZZN.com. First order, use code FIRST50 for 50% off that BUZZN BUZZN. 7.5 milligrams, real THC infused seltzer. Choose your chill. All the different flavors, fruit flavors, all hang, no hangover. You can order it at Drink BUZZN. That's drinkBUZZN.com. Or you can go to your local Big Daddy's liquor store here in South Florida, and they got your cases there of BUZZN. Again, all bubbles, no troubles. BUZZN. drinkBUZZN.com.
Our boy Juan Manuel, who I always say has a great phrasing. He always says, "Stop weaponizing snaps," which I don't. I think he's taking a little bit overboard on that, but he says, "Did Kick get abducted by UFOs?" He's played. He's too similar to some of these other lighter defensive ends right now in terms of replacing a Mesidor.
Yeah, I mean, and Lightfoot probably, maybe a little ahead, but not that far ahead. I mean, but he's played a lot of snaps, right?
That's what I'm saying. Like, it's not like he hasn't been out there. Yeah.
Yeah, he's played a lot, and we should talk about him more. That's more on me. He should be mentioned with the young defensive lineman. Is Pickett, PJ Shaw. D got me hyped up on the BUZZN. Got to place an order. Love it. Just being out there, Pete. You're at this Golden Canes trip. You're out there with a lot of our boys. Mike Ryan is out there as well. Our guy Chi.
Shout out to Cheese out here. Yeah.
So a lot of guys out there for this game. What's the vibe like? What are you feeling?
Yeah, it's good, man. I'm staying in the same hotel here as a lot of the Golden Canes. Everyone excited to be out here. Coach Katie Myers out here. Coach Larinaga's out here. So it's really cool to see their involvement still with the school. And there's so many coaches, I think, across college football in today's, and obviously they're college basketball coaches, but in college sports that, like, it's such a transactional thing for their careers. Hey, like, obviously their careers ended, they did so much and they kind of stepped away there on their own. They weren't fired, so they have good relationships with the school. But the fact that they still want to be around these people that they've built these relationships over the years, I think says a lot about who they are and the program and what they've reciprocated those feelings for. And look, I expect there to be a good amount of Canes fans out here. I know this is a trip that a lot of people plan before the year. It's an easy place to get to. The energy is good, man. It's such a small stadium with 32,000 capacity. I have a good feeling there will be a nice orange and green showing out here. It's interesting because yesterday was Thursday. I think we'll be getting a lot more people in town here today, but everyone's just like still a little bit after Louisville. Everyone's kind of like, oh, we'll see. So the energy's good, but people aren't saying it's a slam dunk win.
It's not, right? I mean, I don't think it is either. I don't think any of them are really. Louisville was the one I thought was a better opponent than SMU, even going into the game. But I thought just the physical differences were going to be tough in the ACC for teams to deal with, and they were able to deal with it with quick passing, with turnovers, running the ball better than they had in previous games. Because this running game for SMU is terrible on paper, but so is Louisville's, and Isaac Brown came out and ran on us. So, we'll see. Kirk saying your room lighting looks like an undercover sting operation. Kirk, miss you out here in Duffy's, the home of the Hurricanes as we record. By the way, if you guys got YouTube TV and you're getting the plug pulled by ESPN, you want to watch the game, Duffy's Tavern, home of the Hurricanes, right there on the edge of Coral Gables is the place to go. KB saying SMU Stadium is small. There's high schools here with bigger capacity. I like that aspect for if I'm SMU, I want it small because they're not going to be getting too many people out there as we get into 11 a.m. game coming off a tough loss.
But here's the thing, and I was talking to an SMU buddy of mine from Miami. Shout out to the DeVitis. And they're out here for the game too, and they're Canes people too, so they play both sides of the fence here. But SMU people still feel like this season's very much alive for them. And we mentioned this with Amon the other day. You win this game if you're SMU. You have Louisville at home. You only have one ACC loss right now. You obviously need some things to go your way, but they have Louisville at home. They feel like if they win this game, they're very much still in play for the ACC here. So I don't think that this team's going to come out and lay down for Miami. If this was in Miami's shoes, you'd have questions of, hey, it's early start. How are they going to come out energy-wise coming off of a loss? I expect SMU to come out ready to play.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's going to be a big game, and it's going to the first quarter is going to tell us a lot. You can't play the first quarter and a half like you did against Stanford last week. That is for sure. A lot of questions about Canes basketball. We did the show. You did the show from the car. You were you had your driver, the chauffeur out there on your secret agent trip, but you were doing the Caleb Gaskins play-by-play. Now you've been around, Katie Meyer, who I know she's excited about women's basketball, which I want to talk about too. I'm going to try to get some info. I have an inside plug there with the women's basketball team. I want to get some info as we get into that season as well, but just overall the basketball program as you're out there kind of around some of those folks who are very passionate about that sport as well and seeing what's happened with Gaskins. We were at the scrimmage. We talked about it yesterday on the live react.
Yeah, they're going to be, the word is, and again, talking to some people out here, this is going to be a tough team, man. This is not going to be the same team. I'm not ready to say this is a tournament team just yet, D. I'm close to saying this is a team that sneaks into the tournament as like a 10-11 seed. But just because I don't know what the ACC looks like yet, I still think that they're still a couple years away. They've had a lot of coaching changes here, and I think they're still a couple years away from getting back closer to what they once were in terms of the strength of the conference as a whole, top to bottom, because the top is still extremely strong. But this is, man, the last 2 years have been very difficult in terms of being a fan who goes to these games. It's not as like I'm as diehard as it gets in these games where, I mean, the interest level, and quite frankly, I'll say this, like I won't sugarcoat it. I think it has hurt the season ticket sales for this year because they were just so darn bad, getting blown out the way they were, that I think people are ready to say, hey, let's see what this team looks like before we commit to anything. And I think fans are going to be very pleasantly surprised with what they see in terms of how this team comes, like, because one of the things I think we loved about those Larinaga teams that made those runs was how they just like were on the floor together. They just really played like a team. They played hard. The basketball IQ was generally pretty high from that era of players. And I think you're trying to get back to that. But physically, man, we're talking about, you and I were at practice the other day. Physically and intensity levels are very, very high right now. And I think that we'll see offensively how efficient they are. Coach Lucas said the other day that he was directly asked, what's something about this team that you think is going to surprise some people? And he says the shooting. He says, because I'm sure that he understands that's what everyone is kind of saying about this team, just looking at the shooting percentage. But he says, I think we're going to be, not a thing, he says, we're going to be a better shooting team than people realize. So obviously, hopefully that comes to fruition. My prediction right now on starting lineup is Trey Donaldson, Dante Allen, Shelton Henderson, Malik Renew, and Ernest Uday. So, and then they're going to have some flexibility, man. I think you're going to see a lot of from again, we were at practice the other day and talking to people, and I think you're going to see a lot of Malik Renew at the 5 when they go small. Shelton Henderson at the 4. You have Timo Malovich as well, who can play the 3 or the 4. He needs to continue to getting stronger, but his ability to stretch the floor there. Noam Dovrat, who they think can really shoot the basketball. And I know they're taking it. They're still, as he gets back to 100% with his knee, they're managing some things there. But seeing him just shoot the ball around at practice the other day, he looks like he's going to be a nice piece for this backcourt. He can play the 1 or the 2, has some size, about 6'5", legitimately. So you've got 10 deep here that I think can really play. True Washington as well. I know he's been banged up a little bit, but I think you see him work himself into that mix heavily. So I'm excited, man. I got to do some research and see the last time Miami had 2 freshmen starting, if it comes to be that Dante Allen and Shelton Henderson both start.
Yeah, but look at Troy Lucas, my guy. Shout out to Casey. He says, someday I'm going to propose to my girl Casey on the CanesInSight podcast powered by Anajar and Levine. We got you, Troy. We'll take care of you. But the team was very serious. That was what jumped out at me, was just how serious the whole operation was. Not that it was not serious against Larinaga, but just different kinds of kids. I'm not comparing this team to the Final Four team, but comparing this team to last season, right? Just those two. It just seems like a different demeanor, particularly with the younger players. These guys are just locked and loaded. They are very, very serious dudes, physical dudes, complete guys. Henderson and Dante Allen really leading that charge. I think it's going to come down a lot to late game execution, because this is a team that I think is going to be in a lot of close games. They're going to be a low scoring operation. They're going to fight. They're not going to be a team that rolls over. So it's going to be, all right, when you have a lot of close games, what's your record going to be in those close games? A guy like Donaldson, he's huge, because at the end of games, he's the one that's going to be trying to take shots and run the show. He had a lot of success doing that in Michigan. That to me is the one that I got my eye on. Is he going to be just the late game star of the ACC and getting a ton of press because he's had so many late game moments? Or are we going to struggle a little bit and lose a lot of close games? I don't see this being a team that gets blown out the water very often.
You know what I really like, too, about having 2 freshmen potentially start, D, is, and again, I feel like we're making a lot of comments that's like, oh, well, Larinaga didn't do this. It has nothing to do with that. It's just a different philosophy.
Best coach we've ever had.
Yeah. I mean, he's the reason that the program has any sort of relevance right now. But the fact that Lucas is trusting the young guys will go a long way in recruiting. Miami was landing big recruits with Coach L. People are very excited about recruiting, as we should be now, but Miami recruited at a high level rankings wise with Coach
Bethea
L.
was actually higher ranked than Henderson and Gaskins, if I recall.
There was a time last year where Bethea was the number 2 or 3 pick in a lot of projections, right? So, but he didn't start right away. Keyshawn George, who is having a tremendous second year now in the league, did not start until midway through the year, pretty much. And you knew he was the most talented player on the team. Now, you understand their dynamics, but I think if you're Jay Lucas, you gotta throw these young guys out there and take their lumps now at the beginning of the season, so that once you get into AC, I think the problem was with some of these guys, like you tried to thrust Bethea into the mix as you got closer towards the December there, and really try to give him a bigger role. And it just, you need that first month and a half of the season to work some of this stuff out. And I think that's going to go a long way in recruiting. I think he can point to, hey, we have 2 guys in the starting lineup this year as true freshmen. And I think it's important to have that mix of the veteran leadership, but then also developing the young guys. So.
By the way, Keyshawn George, I know it's Washington Wizards and they're 1-4. You got to take that part of it with a grain of salt. But, man, he's 21 years old. This is the NBA. He's averaging 18.6 points a game, almost 9 rebounds, which that's a sticky stat. I think that's going to be a good indicator for him going forward. 5.2 assists, 1.4 blocks, and a steal. 50% plus 53% shooting from the field, 55% from 3, hitting 3.4 threes a game on 6.2 attempts. So that'll even out a little bit, and the team is poor, so he's able to put up more shots than he otherwise would. But man, we loved him coming out. We thought he was an NBA player from the beginning, but I didn't expect this level of scoring and just overall production at this age.
Yeah, I think it goes to the fact that he got to play a lot last year too, and work a lot of that stuff out. He was so young physically when he got here. I remember seeing him like the first week on campus, and he had the baby face. He wasn't anywhere near filled out, but he was so long and gangly that you could just tell he was gonna, which he would do at Miami. He could get his shot off from deep. He had range. And as he's, I think, continued to get stronger, continue to play through contact. Remember, this guy was like 5'3" 2 years before he came to Miami. He had maybe a little bit taller than 5'4", 5'6" range, but like he grew 9 inches in a year or something like that. So to me, his body is now starting to catch up with the skill set that he always had. And his dad was like a power forward, like a big, strong power forward. So I think that he's just going to continue to get better, man. 18 points a game, 8 rebounds a game.
Yeah.
And he has playmaking ability. What are his assists at right now?
It's like 5 or something like that.
Yeah.
5.2.
Can this guy probably in a few years is going to be close to averaging a triple-double? It's not that far to say. It's not that hard to say, right?
Yeah, NBA is crazy right now. I can't even keep track with the numbers that people are putting up, but good to see a Kane putting up those kind of numbers. Bagging up saying, I need to find Pete and get a run when I come to Miami. I want to see Pete's actual hoop ability.
Let's do it. Let me know.
Take him down to the post. Real quick before we get out of here, want to shout out the Miami Hurricane team store. They got a cool deal going on where if you sign up for their mailing list, you get entered into a raffle to potentially win a Malachi Tony and CJ Daniels signed football. So that's pretty cool. Still got the CanesInSight promo code, which is Insight20. That's whether you're ordering online, MiamiHGS.com, or in store, just say CanesInSight. They'll pull it up for you. Get 20% off your first item. Look at these game day fits. You got a ton of them here. Get your game day gear. Get these water bottles. This is my thing right here. This is what I'm taking to the baseball games, watching youth baseball right here. One of these deals. Got the Miami. This is a cool hat here, the Miami Maniac hat. For the baseball team, which is rocking and rolling. Scrimmage yesterday. All kinds of stuff. Sweatpants, jogger pants, you name it. Any kind of weather. MiamiHTS.com. Miami Hurricane team store right across the street from the University of Miami. All right, Pete, I'll let you go. Enjoy Texas. Hopefully we'll see you post-game, Pete. I think you're not going to be able to because you'll be at the game. So it'll be post-game D, and then
no,
Pete
well,
you'll come in later.
I can do it. I'll just be walking out of the stadium. So
that's a dangerous one. We'll figure out the logistics, but I know we'll get your post game, Pete. The people need it at some point, and I'll hold it down here. So we're switching roles as you represent CanesInSight over there in Dallas, Texas. People were wondering why we weren't on shows together in the comments. They were worried there was like a split or something. But
I'll say this, D. I'll say this, and we can end it here. There's a lot of chaos at CanesInSight. There is a lot of chaos at CanesInSight.
Go Canes. Like and subscribe to the show.
Go Canes.